And thank you for staying tuned to us on this very dial. Today, let's get into the analysis proper. I mean, so many stories to go on. I'm not doing this alone. I have with me Eboselume Ignatius Ofino. Thank you for joining us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Anolu Apoido.
It's so good to have you. So let's get, you called my full name, by the way. So let's get into the story now. One of the stories we will take very quickly for one of time is, now, Tinubu has, welcomed those 24 KB schoolgirls that were abducted. And it seems like a good one. But while we speak on that, there was another issue in Kwara State involving some persons being kidnapped. But the president has ordered aerial surveillance over KB Forest and some other regions as well. This is a development, and I think this is what a lot of Nigerians are expecting, that the body language of the government should be fierce and be, be stable to say, this is it, we don't want this kind of thing. But let's talk about the issue of which one should we take is the conversation now. But let's take that issue very quickly, that the federal government is doing something. Do you think this would, in a sense, maybe not totally eradicate the issue of insurgency, but will it go a long way?
When the Americans decided to intervene, we discovered that violence escalated again in Nigeria. We cannot rule that out. So we don't actually know who are the true sponsors of terrorism in this country. I know that of recent, His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu decided to bring in new service chiefs. And at the end of the day, what happened again? There was high rate of insecurity again. So there is a lot of problem in this country. When it comes to issue of security, there is one thing I sense. There is a lot of conspiracy within the Nigerian armed forces, both internal and external conspiracy. And when you look at the Nigerian army for now, there is what we call insubordination. Mutiny. Most of the foot soldiers are no longer taking orders from their superior anymore. Because now you are asking them to fight terrorists, but you are not giving them sophisticated weapons that they can use to launch attack against these terrorists. But when you look at the terrorists, the weapon they are using what we call sophisticated weapon. Then you now ask, where do they get this weapon? And most of them sometimes, they are having what we call hard currency. How come these terrorists have hard currencies? So you cannot rule out the finger of what we call international conspiracy when it comes to the issue of terrorism in Nigeria.
There's also one issue that rings so loud in your heart, and that's because you also practice it. I'm talking about food situation. I know you are a big person, or you are big on that particular. So let's talk about that. United Nations has predicted severe food crisis in Nigeria. About 35 million expected to go through hunger crisis in the country. Borno, Kwara, KB, and some other states are also involved, are the ones that are maybe not earmarked now, but the ones that are on the red zone of hunger crisis in the country amid United States aid. Maybe some have said slash or cut, but whichever the case is, banditry is also inclusive in one of the problems we're having. But how do we go forward as an expert? I want you to speak like a subject matter specialist now, because that's one of your areas now. Speak to us. What should Nigeria do better in food, in ensuring food circulation and food security?
Human beings cannot survive without food. But why we got it wrong was this: when the killer herdsmen were attacking farmers and killing them too. That was how we had problem in this country. Now we have what we call rising food inflation in Nigeria. Then there is what we call food scarcity. Then we have what we call increasing population. Now, what the government ought to have done is this: when the crisis started between killer herdsmen and the local farmers around the Middle Belt region of Nigeria, the government did not take what we call decisive action. Now you can see a lot of farmers have been killed. Most of those farmers today in the north, most of them have become what we call Okada rider here in the south. They left the farm. Nobody wants to die. So there is a big problem in this country. Then we are talking about food import. Where is the food importation? Food importation has been banned in this country, except those who are trying to smuggle food into this country. So there is a big problem on ground. So when you see international organizations raising the alarm that there is a serious problem in Nigeria in respect to food security. For now, we don't even have what we call food sufficiency. There is a difference between food sufficiency and food security. So when we are talking about food sufficiency, you have enough food that can go around. But when we are talking about food security, you are talking about availability of food that is sustainable over a long period of time. That is why you see the United States today, they have attained that level of what we call food security. But in Nigeria today, what are we having? We are having what we call food scarcity because of local problems that I feel that the government alone can solve it. But because the government is looking the other way around, the government has turned itself into what we call religious bigot or tribal bigot, especially during the days of Muhammadu Buhari. So there is a big problem. Go to Benue State today. Go to Plateau State. They are the food basket of the nation. But the killer herdsmen, we are going there, attacking them, killing farmers. And the government did not do anything about this. Now we are having what we call food crisis in Nigeria. It's a big problem.
All right. Let's take another story for one of time, very quickly. I will stop rigging vote buying. Amokwiton has said that. He said he vows to stop vote buying and rigging in the country. How feasible is this?
I'm not Professor Ujo Amukpiton, but there's one thing.
Do you think it's possible?
But there's one thing Martin Luther King Jr. said. He said, our lives begins to end when we become silent about things that matter. That was what Martin Luther King said. So for now, Professor Ojo Amukpiton has a name to protect, but he's given Nigeria that assurance. I think it's good for us to give him an applause in respect to the election that took place in Anambra State. Although there was still vote buying. It wasn't the fault of INEC. It was the failure of the Nigerian government to introduce or to establish what we call electoral tribunal, or what we call electoral offenses tribunal in this country. So that when you establish some type of electoral offenses tribunal, one, then there must be task force too. EFCC also have a role to play during election. Anybody that is found receiving, distributing money during campaign should be arrested as a criminal. It should not be seen as a civil offense. It should be seen as a criminal offense. Electoral rigging in this country should be seen as a criminal offense, not as a civil offense. So that there will be penalty for those who violate the electoral laws. So it will not serve as a deterrent for those who are nursing those evil ambitions. Because when you are talking about election, you are talking about the collective destiny of the citizens of a country.
Now, the professor also said something, moving on from that issue. He says 7 years single term will establish or stabilize governance. That's coming from a LASU prof. What is your take? Some have said we should do more than 4 or 8 year term because it's not helping. Nobody can bring back a nation that has fallen to the ground in 4-8 years. Let's do more. What do you think?
The professor have right to his own opinion, but I strongly disagree with him. It's the mindset.
So it's not the years.
Not the years. It's the mindset of the leader. Look at Lee Kuan Yew. Lee Kuan Yew transformed Singapore from a third world country to a first world country because he had the right mindset. And what did he do? Introduce 3 things. You know what he did? He said meritocracy. 1, pragmatism. And 3, honesty. It was in principle. They saw him as a leader. They saw him as a father figure. Everybody imbibed with what he introduced. So it's not single term of 7 years or single term of 10 years. If you want to do something right, if there was one thing Chief Jeremiah Obafemi Awolowo, GCFR, said, you know what he said?
What?
He said if he can be given opportunity to rule Nigeria, he's going to transform Nigeria within 24 hours. He was a philosopher. The right mindset. But what we're having today, we're having leaders that are corrupt, one. Then we have institutional failure. When we are talking about capital project or capital infrastructure, it is one of the inalienable rights of the people. They have the right to security, right to good roads, right to quality education, right to quality healthcare delivery system, right to good economy, irrespective of the political party that wins the election. But in Nigeria, it's not like that. Whenever you see, if care is not taken, we are going to drift towards a one-party system. Because there is a problem in this country. You know the problem? If they discover that your state did not win the majority vote for a ruling party at the center, sometimes they deny your state some capital project. Is the government being fair? Is the president being fair? The president never scored a 0 vote. Though the vote is scored in that particular state was low. But the government will now technically decide to deny that state some capital project just because the state did not vote for the president, just because the government that is ruling that state is not a member of the political party of the president. What a country and what a government.
I mean, for one of time, we might need to round off this session. We need to actually, because there's so many issues to talk about, but we are pressed for time. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Ignatius,
thank you.
All right, we'll now switch our gears now to another conversation. But you want to know what that is? We're talking about security dilemma between empowering vigilance groups and arms control with Oluwayemi Adelakun. After this break, join us again on this channel.